Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came here this morning on a day in which we're flying out, hoping that we would talk about a positive thing that we're working toward. And instead, they can't help themselves. The chairman of the subcommittee, the chairman of the committee can't help themselves but to politicize. They just don't like the president. Let's put a sign in this committee room as long as the Democrats will just put it up there. We don't like the president. We know it. So let's get over it. Okay, yes. I mean, if we want to go back and we'll talk about President Obama on the last day commuting 300, including Chelsea Manning. I mean, we want to talk about these? Let's do that. But look, why don't we talk about the positive? We don't want to because we failed in impeachment and we can't forget it. It's just stunning to me that this committee, which can do so much to help those that are incarcerated, those that are facing the criminal justice system, those that are going through it, has frankly just been AWOL the last year and a half. But we did something in the last time. In fact, this is what makes this so much sadder, is that last Congress I did partner with a number of my colleagues across the aisle, dear friends, Hakeem Jeffries and others, to get the First Step Act to President Trump's desk for a signature. Yes, President Trump's desk for a signature. After 8 years under the previous administration, which we talked about it a lot, I was supportive of those measures. But never happened. Never happened. So the first meaningful stuff that actually happened is from President Trump. As many of you know, that bill was near and dear to my heart. It was something we'd put a lot of time and effort into. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Hakeem in particular, who did yeoman's work on his side, and our friends in the Senate who added things to it but also worked yeoman's work, made something different for the American people. When Matthew Charles walked into the room just beside me in that library and hugged me, and as he had done with Hakeem and others, saying, I'm now out of prison because of the First Step Act. Thank you. And now his life has changed and is different. Those are the positive stories we need to talk about. Those are the things that clemency can bring, that pardons can bring. Just simply griping at a president you don't like because of the way that it has been handled and because you can go back on both sides and talk about how presidents have not done it over the past 25 years is not the way to start this. Since the First Step Act was signed into law, we've seen communities restored, hope renewed, and families reunited. That legislation is a measure of mercy that should serve as a guide toward potential future reforms. The First Step Act ensures dangerous, violent criminals serve their time behind bars. It excludes the nation's most dangerous offenders from applying any time credit for their sentences, and no prisoner who has a recidivism risk level higher than low is eligible for pre-release custody under the First Step Act, and the warden, who ultimately knows the prisoner best, makes the final decision. There's a lot of lies going on about this act. This is what it actually does. And it all goes back to what I used to say about this bill being monies and morals, is how we spend our money for people that we do incarcerate, but our morals on how we feel about them, that we give them a chance when they get out to make something of their life. 95% of all individuals who go to jail get out. They don't go there to die. They get out. What are we doing as a federal system, and how are we encouraging state and locals to look at them as human beings that they are, many who made mistakes, many of them made tragic mistakes, many of them with mental health, many with addictions and other things. We've got to provide a better way. For those 5 to 10% who need to stay in forever, they got plenty of jail space for them. If you want to live outside law and you want to do something so heinous, you're going to stay in there, and nobody has said you can get out. But for those who deserve a chance, that's what this bill does. The First Step Act embodies the mercy and forgiveness that must accompany any law enforcement regime governing human affairs. I stood by the president when he made his remarks last year at the Prison Reform Summit and First Step Act celebration, when he stated, this landmark legislation will give countless current and former prisoners a second chance at life and a new opportunity to contribute to their communities, their states, and their nations. As president, I pledged to work with both parties for the good of the whole nation. The more I spoke and met with those individuals and those involved in our criminal justice system, the more clear it became that unfair sentencing rules were contributing to the cycle of poverty and crime like nothing else before. It was time to fix this broken system and to improve the lives of so many nonviolent prisoners who will have opportunities to participate in vocational training, education, drug treatment programs. When they get out of prison, they will be ready to get a job instead of turning back to a life of crime. As we consider executive clemency process, I would hope the same sentiments will help guide us today, even with the start of this hearing. The constitutional authority to the president to pardon offenders under the Constitution is very broad and not up for changing by law in this committee. That is a constitutional guarantee. Want to have a constitutional amendment? Maybe so, but not any other way. Congress doesn't have a constitutional authority to restrict the president's pardon authority in any significant way. And the Constitution gives the president vast leeway to decide who he may receive a pardon and when it be issued. But there's also precedent for Congress to provide a variety of ways in which we can, with the Department of Justice and other entities, assist the president in evaluating applications. The result of any such evaluation is simply advisory, and they cannot bind the president's Article II authority to pardon. The president also can't be required to consult with any person, entity, before considering a pardon. But the president can consider standards for reviewing pardon petitions, and the Department of Justice has offered just that in the past and continues to do so today. Factors taken into consideration include post-conviction conduct, character, and reputation, seriousness and relative recentness of the offense, acceptance of responsibility, remorse, atonement, and the need for relief, and official recommendations and reports. Of course, beyond such official guidance, the president can always consult with his beliefs and faith understandings. In my experience, and from my background, I've been moved again by the words of the psalmist who said, "You, Lord, are forgiving and good, abounding in love, all who call to you." Stated in the New Testament in Corinthians, he says that we're committed to a message of reconciliation. That is faith. But the best many times comes from just the simple instructions that we find in Ephesians. It says, "Be kind and compassionate one to another, forgiving each other just as Christ forgave you." The fundamental message of Scripture, which drives many, including myself, speaks of promise, hope, and redemption, always following human cruelty. It is with that spirit that I would hope from here on out we approach this subject today. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what goes on this stage right here. It's about those who right now are behind bars. It's behind those who are getting ready to enter the criminal justice system, who are going through the struggles that this committee can help and can be a part of. And if we focus on them, then lives can be changed. Instead of making it harder, we ought to be reaching out with a hand to lift up, because they are the least among us. With that, I yield back.